Day 6. We had originally planned to span the 124 miles between Boise and Twin Falls with 300 plus miles of Tom's local rides, but Day 5's adventures mandated a lesser day to recuperate. A 90-mile sprint down I-84 to Bliss, Idaho, followed with a leisurely ride into the Snake River Valley and Thousand Springs, was spectacular enough. An underground river slices through solid rock wall of the Snake River Gorge to dump its contents into the river below. Absolutely stunning. We met up with fellow renegade that evening, Jeff Somerville, and he rode with us the rest of the trip. Day 7. We had planned on a 4-day trip to Yellowstone, but quickly disabused ourselves of that notion once we learned it was snowing in Wyoming. Instead, we elected to ride our previous loop in reverse. It was all new for Jeff, and reverse would give Tom and I a different view of the same spectacular beauty. We left Twin Falls about 8:30 and headed toward Thousand Springs. Once again I was struck by the magnificence of nature. The waterfall appearing in the seemingly solid rock wall is extraordinary. We elected to forego Horseshoe Bend in favor of 80 miles less to travel. The magnificent curves are best ridden uphill, and our path would have been down. We passed through Brownlee and headed into Oxbow in the entrance to Hell's Canyon, only to discover that Tom's helmet had fallen off his bike. So we developed a plan B as we searched rural towns for a helmet he could buy. We discovered a large enough funnel, but we felt the local law enforcement community would object. Our search eventually led us to the resort community of McCall, Idaho. We had dinner at a century-old saloon steakhouse and topped off another great day of riding. Day 8. After a grand fire the night before, fueled by the gathering efforts of the children of neighboring campers, a cold 34-degree morning greeted us in the beautiful Ponderosa State Campground outside McCall. A chilly ride into town was short, but a so-so breakfast met us at an eclectic coffee shop. Warm and an interesting clientele were the highlights as we delayed continuing our journey, hoping the sun would break through the clouds. Finally, we could deny the call of the road no longer, and we fired up the steel horses and hit the fog-shrouded country roads. Yes, it was cold. In fact, this was quite possibly the coldest hour of the trip, with the possible exception of my return home, as I seem to be getting ahead of myself. I haven't mentioned this previously, but a nagging oil seep had developed on my beloved bike, and I felt compelled to address it today. A loss of less than half a quart over 2,000 miles was quite small, but wiping oil slime off exhaust each fill-up was finally enough, too much to tolerate any longer. I was a decent shade tree mechanic in my reckless youth. Have I ever mentioned that I assembled a Yamaha 650 engine in my bedroom as a teenager? So I felt entirely qualified to disassemble a motorcycle engine at a campground. We found a Star dealer in Lewiston and secured the necessary gasket. All I needed was a workplace. After another day of near incredible riding and constant wiping, we found it in Wild Goose Campground along spectacular U.S. Highway 12 outside Lowell, Idaho. I leaned the bike against the bench, carefully covered and cushioned, and set to work removing the engine cover. 30 minutes later, I found the right side cover gasket had an 1/8-inch break, and oil had splashed out to cover the bike in a fine sheen of lubricant. Another 30 minutes and it was back together, begging my attention for a quick ride to verify my skills. Eureka! It worked. I also rediscovered the everyday civility of country folks when my cell phone had no signal, the payphone didn't work, and the owner of the resort, campground, restaurant, whitewater rafting, and general store allowed me to make a long-distance call and then wouldn't accept any money. Honorable people who choose to live outside the mainstream, yet respect all those who show up. You'd never find this kind of generosity in the big city. I felt compelled to buy something that evening. In fact, those who know me can attest to the reluctance I must have shown as I made a purchase in protest of their refusal to accept payment. I'll show them, I thought as I tucked the beer into my jacket. There, take that. Our stay was marred by the arrival of a group of campers about 3:30 a.m. They seemed to take pleasure in shining their flashlights among our tents. They giggled constantly as they set up their camp. Nevertheless, we exercised restraint as we rode away the next morning. But boy, there was temptation to make the motorcycle roar. But then we would have been just like them, and one group was enough. Day 9. Unbeknownst to us, we had crossed into the Pacific time zone. I mean, there was a sign, but that was yesterday, and yesterday's gone. That meant when we left the campsite at 7, it was in fact 6. We had planned to gas up at the only station in Lowell, Idaho, and ride 130 miles over the Lolo Pass into Lolo, Montana. Beautiful, lonely, and gas station free. Unfortunately, they allegedly open at 7. Once we discovered our timing error, we elected to wait. What else could we do? 7 o'clock brought the neighboring restaurant staff to work, but no gas attendant. 7:30 brought the restaurant to life, so we rode on over to enjoy one of the finest country breakfasts of my life. I mean, really great, but still no gas. A clue from the waitress indicated that there were good days and bad days for the station, and it was shaping up to be a bad one. She then told us about a gas station 65 miles up the road at the Loxa Lodge. We quickly conferred among ourselves. Could we make it that far? Yes. Off the main road and only one sign, so he had to remain vigilant. But they had gas. Our day was saved and we were off. Now I've got to say that I saw a sign and stopped for a photo. Caution, winding road, next 99 miles. A motorcyclist's dream were the next 3 hours of our lives. Wow. The next sign was really quite amazing. Caution, moose crossing. No moose, but we did photograph and video a mountain goat herd feeding alongside the road. We went on to spend a quiet night at the Salmon, Idaho campground we had previously visited. We did manage to photograph 3 deer as they made their way along the highway, US 93. Day 10. Breakfast at Buddy's Texaco was pretty good despite the obvious. Well rested, by this time I was an expert camper, and well fed, we headed toward Stanley and the Sawtooth Mountains. Spectacular, once again, is a word used all too often, yet so inadequate to this task. Lunch, a sawtooth melt. Wow. And we were on our way into Sun Valley, Idaho. Did I mention that it was raining? Did I mention that we had donned our macho attitude but not our rain gear? Did I mention how stupid that is? Cold, too. We passed over the summit into the Sun Valley Ketchum area when the rain started. Just a drizzle, but at 60 miles an hour on a bike at 8,000 feet in altitude, it's quite enough, thank you. Finally, 20 miles and 30 minutes too late, we stopped to gas up and gear up. Long live Frog Togs. I don't know how they do it, but they are light, paper thin, and amazingly waterproof. On to Twin Falls and the end of our adventure. Our final day riding the Super Slab, US Highway 93 to Wells, Nevada, and I-80 to Sacramento covers nearly 600 miles. There is a summit along US 93 that topped off at almost 6,400 feet. Not on any map I've seen. But it can be and is quite cold. The temps hit 42 degrees, and I repeatedly flexed my fingers 40 times each hand to maintain dexterity. I hadn't intended to eat once reaching Wells, but my body needed the warmth, so I pretended to be hungry as I soaked in the comfort of the local Burger King. Edible food and nice people. I was warming my hands in the bathroom sink under warm water when my food was served. I returned to discover the attendant had placed it on my table along with ketchup and salt. I was not in the big city, that's for sure. While I quietly protest the injustice to the freedom of the back road that the interstate highway system delivers, I welcome the trip back home. 10 days in heaven was our mantra, and achieved it was, but home is where the heart is, and I was ready to be there. Next year, the Pacific Coast Highway in Yosemite. If you don't know where that is, well, I guess we'll be going without you. Too bad.